Well, welcome to Finding the Good. I am here with Edith. Edith, how are you?
I'm doing very good. Just ate, so I'm doing extra good right now.
Yes. Well, Edith, here on Finding the Good, we talk about all the good things that God has done in our lives. And I'm so excited for Edith to share her story today. And so it's funny because we were just talking right now. I just moved to Fort Worth about 6 months ago, but used to live in San Antonio for 13 years. And it's just like, how have we never met being in the
I
same
know.
city for so long? We actually have a few mutual friends. Angela Marrero, who was actually
Yes,
on
yeah.
Finding the Good, love her, and
Oh,
Jamie Lynn, who is here in Dallas in Fort
oh,
Worth.
that's right.
Yes,
Yes,
so
yes. Okay.
she's been on the show as well, and she's a mutual friend, and so I actually discovered Edith through those girls, and just saw all the wonderful things that you're doing for women in San Antonio through social media. So before we get into the interview, why don't you share those wonderful things and just tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that lovely intro. My name is Edith Rodriguez, and a little bit about myself. I wouldn't know where to begin because I could go on and on forever. But right now, where I'm at is I've been married for 4 years. My husband and I just completed our 4-year anniversary, and we have a almost 2-year old. He'll be 2 at the end of this month. And I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I love being a mom. I love it so, so much. Being home with him and learning how to be at home, but also work on the many projects that I know God has called me to. And so I
Mhm.
just juggle all the things and enjoy being a mom and enjoy pouring into women. And I do that through, I have a nonprofit, which is She is Society. And we are a community of women who just encourage each other to grow in our faith. It's very simple.
Love it.
And we have events, we have conferences, we have retreats. And then I also have the another academy that I just started, and this is to educate women on how to pursue their purpose, how to find their purpose, how to go after their purpose, and really just how to go after everything that God calls them to on this side of heaven, and just really providing tools and resources to ensure that they're able to do that successfully. Because I think for me, it took me quite some time, and I didn't really have what me and my partners have put into Lux to create is what we didn't have. And we wish we would
Mhm.
have had at a time in our lives where we were trying to figure out and discover who we are as women and what
Yeah.
God is calling us to do.
Hmm.
So
That's
yeah,
so
lots of things.
beautiful. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love how you're just creating this space for women to come together and just have community and learn who they are in Christ. And so I love that so much. And I'll be sure to link all those things so you can find Edith. And if you're in San Antonio, you can get in on that. But so today, Edith is going to be sharing her testimony on how she overcame bulimia while actually during a season she owned a fitness center. And so my first question for you is, how did you get into the fitness world and when did you own a fitness center?
So it was in 2012. Okay, so in 2011 and probably like 2010, 2011, I started working out. I was getting to like I was going to turn 30. I remember I was like 2 years away from turning 30. And at that time, I just felt like that was such a critical time in my life because
Mm-hmm.
I tied so much to that age. For some reason or
Yeah.
another, I felt like I had to do something significant, something huge, like I had to leave a mark. And I thought it was going to be through fitness, which is really weird. But so I decided to compete and do fitness shows because that's what I thought at that time would be success, that I would be able to
Mm-hmm.
leave a mark.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to train, and I'm very like competitive, and anything that I set myself to do, I do it like over the top. And that was very much the case with competing. I had just gotten out of a relationship at that time. So
Mm-hmm.
this kind of pretty much took the place of my relationship. I put all of my time, resources, money, everything into the season of my life where I just wanted to reach a certain goal. And I really was self-taught. I did have, a kickboxing instructor who kind of cheered me on. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, I really just Googled everything and learned,
Yeah.
what other competitors were doing. And from there, it went into starting a business, because a lot of women started asking me, like, what are you doing? And at that time, there wasn't a lot of group fitness. And so that was around 2012.
Mm-hmm.
I think CrossFit was probably just coming out, but there wasn't any group fitness like boot camps and just a lot of the other things that I incorporated into that that time. And so, yeah, it was just I thought, you know what, let me make some extra income. I'll start a boot camp and I'll take the money that they, I need to get equipment. I need to set this up somehow. So I asked for a deposit. They gave the deposit. I went out, bought the equipment, and really the rest is history. I quit my job 2 months after making that decision. And I'm saying it like with so much ease, but I remember that was a time in my life where I was just like at a crossroads and thought, I'm leaving security and, certainty and a guaranteed paycheck and comfort and, assurance for really just walking into the complete unknown in business
Yeah.
owner. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny though that you say like, turning 30. I think turning 30 for me was like a really big deal. I didn't like quit my job or do anything like that. I might have done it actually the following year, but it's just funny how as women we view ourselves through this lens of like our age instead of like, the way God sees us. Can you just kind of talk about that, like during that season wanting to make your mark? Like, what was your view of yourself? How did you view yourself?
At that time, I remember very clearly, I was a person who just started things but didn't finish them.
Mm.
And I was just always really disappointed with myself because I had big ideas and I had things that I felt were exciting, but I would start and then I would not finish. One thing, for example, was, starting college.
Yeah.
I wanted to I wanted to be a nutritionist. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always just loved fitness and nutrition and but I just didn't finish. And then also beauty school. I was going to be a cosmetologist. I went for like maybe 2 months and then there were so many things that I started and just never finished. And so there was a lot of other things. I'm like, no, I'm not going to share that one. But, but, I just wanted to finish something, but
Yeah.
I just struggled with that because I was always being pulled in different directions. And my lifestyle at that time was really more of like instant gratification. So that was like hanging out with friends and probably not making the best choices. But I knew for some reason, like you said, from 29 to 30, I thought I really need to do something because I hadn't really left, an impression on anything, not even
Mm.
myself.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, I was just really trying to discover myself. And I didn't really know where to look, but God knew
Yeah.
what he was doing in that time and what he was preparing that stage for.
Yeah. So then you're in the fitness world, you're doing these competitions, you own the gym. How did the bulimia begin?
So the bulimia began because about in 2000, so when I started the business was very quickly after I started competing. So I competed for a whole year. I did 4 shows in 1 year. And then that led into me, starting the business. And so from 2011 to 2012, I remember a friend having, like having a heart to heart with me and just said, Edith, you can't like run a business and compete. You've got to like really focus on, the business and your clients. Cause it grew exponentially almost overnight.
Wow.
I went from, I went from like 15 members to 60 members in about 4 months.
Mm.
So just managing that, I didn't have the experience. I felt like I was helping people, but I really had a hard time dealing with people. So there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of things going on. But after when I stopped competing, I told myself, you know what, I'm not going to compete for a month. I'm going to get my business settled and get things established here, and then I'll do a show next year, right? So what ended up happening, which I didn't even realize, is that what I would do after every show, because you're on such a strict diet, you deplete yourself from so many nutrients, including water. You really put your body under so much stress. What would happen after the shows is that I would binge. I would eat and eat because I felt like I had a bottomless pit, like I could eat and eat without feeling full. And so what happened, so since I competed for a year, I would just, binge, but then I would get back on my diet. And so this time, because I didn't prepare for another show, what ended up happening is that I didn't stop the binging. I kept binging and binging and binging. And I couldn't control it. So I put 40 pounds on within about 4 to 6 months after my last show.
Wow.
And so I had never been, 40 pounds overweight. My BMI said that I was obese. And so it was just a lot on me mentally, emotionally, physically, because I was running a business that taught other women how to, look their best and feel their best. And I didn't look or feel my best.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you could imagine the mental job that was for any woman, especially for me at that time and season of my life, because I was very early in my faith too. So I didn't really, know about who I am in Christ. And, I didn't know how to hear God's voice very well. I thought I did, but there was a lot of things that God was going to use that time of my life to teach me a lot of these things.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, so going through that behind closed doors, because you're running a business, you probably don't want people to know this secret, so you have to put on this facade and this mask. Can you just talk about like your emotions having to do that? Because that can be a lot. Maybe feeling like you're two people. You have to be on when you're there for these women and showing them how to be fit, but then behind closed doors, you just like are struggling. Can you just talk about some of those moments?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a good question. I was just so lost and so confused with why this was happening to me, because I felt so experienced and knowledgeable. And, I had been doing the things that I did in the past that helped me and that worked for me, and none of it was working. So I knew what to do. I knew, how much to eat. I knew what foods to avoid. But one of the things that I learned that I knew God had to take me through, I didn't really have much compassion for people who were overweight. That's something that I'm so sad to have to admit now, because at the time you don't even realize how naive, or not naive, but how shallow you are. You think you're a good person. You think that you're helping people. But I remember, women coming to me and just pouring their hearts out and saying how much they struggled with not being able to get the weight off or keep the weight off. And I just thought, just stop eating, because I did it so easily. I thought it should be just as easy for everybody else. But oh man, I mean, that was such a great lesson that God took me through. Is He taught me to be compassionate for men and women that go through this, because I learned about food addiction. And through that whole entire journey, I became addicted to food. And I was so desperate for an answer that I started just as aggressively and as intensely as I was looking to become, top competitor in the fitness industry. I was looking how to heal my body, how to, turn things around. I hired a coach out of Canada that, his program cost $3,000, but he was very known for being able to reverse this condition. It was called metabolic damage, is what they called it, which is very common within the bikini community, because a lot of women put their bodies under so much stress. And then they end up, binging, and they just can't get their bodies back to where they were once able to. And so this was a common thing, and he was known for that. So I paid him. And so, I did all of these things, researched, read books. Just spent countless hours researching, food addiction and foods that heal. I did Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
Sorry.
this is the first time I'm hearing about like food addiction. I
Mhm.
come from a background where my father was a drug addict, so I'm very familiar with like, drug addiction and um, alcoholism, but I've never heard food addiction. So could you just share a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. And, as I was listening to your other podcast with one of the girls that you had, and she was talking about her addiction, I thought,
Hmm.
yeah, food, my bulimia, that's what I want to share on. You had asked me, let me know what you'd like to share. And I thought, I haven't really shared extensively and
Hmm.
in depth, that whole journey, um, because I think there was still some shame around it, and
Yeah.
embarrassment of some of the things that I was doing. But I just thought people don't put enough attention on the fact that there is such a thing as food addiction. And so we just go about our day to day, addicted to food and not even knowing it. So
Hmm.
if we can't diagnose, or if we're not aware of the thing that is causing, this harm to ourselves, whether it's through weight gain or just how you feel about your body, how you feel about when you're eating food. I mean, there's so many things tied to food that we don't even realize it. And because we don't have that knowledge, we're not able to really fight and improve and make choices and make decisions that are going to lead us to a healthier lifestyle, like a true healthy lifestyle.
Hmm.
Um, and it's such a shame because, I wish that there was more, more of a beam, of a spotlight on this topic. But
Hmm.
food addiction is it's so real. I mean, the way that they create food and that they make food, they spend millions and millions of dollars on just creating the texture, the taste, so that they can, get you addicted to the food. A lot of the ingredients that are being used are designed to get you addicted to the food. So
Yeah.
when I was eating a lot of this food, a lot of the foods, I could go through, when you ask the question, like, what was going on behind the scenes? Let me just run you through a day of what I
Yeah,
would do.
please. Yeah.
I would wake up in the morning. I thought, today's the day. I'm going to get better. I'm not going to
Hmm.
fall off the track. Like, I'm going to do this. I'd go work out, and then I would do good. I was doing the plan that this trainer put me on. One of the things that he allowed was kind of like a cheat meal, or like you could have whatever you wanted to eat within this window, but it had to be like a certain amount of carbs and whatnot.
Hmm.
So what happened is that this window pretty much allotted me to fall back into the binging, because
Mm.
certain foods triggered the food addiction.
Okay.
So then, here I am doing good, doing my workout, eating well. And then that window would just send me on a downward spiral again.
Hmm.
So I would go into my pantry. Why I had a whole box of Oreo cookies in there is because I had a 16-year-old son at the time who
Hmm.
loved to eat this stuff. So I had my healthy food and then his healthy food, but I could eat a whole box of Oreos. And um, I would not feel food like full. I could not eat that now. Like, I ate 2 Oreos and I'm like, ugh, so much sugar. Like, you feel like
Hmm.
you're chewing sugar.
Hmm.
But at that time, what was going on in my body chemically, I don't know why that food did what it did to me then and why it doesn't do it now. I can't fully explain it yet,
Hmm.
but I do know that at that time I tied it with, it was so crazy. And this is the first time I talk about it in a long time. And I'm just going back to those memories because
Yeah.
I guess it's just something that I kind of put out. But
Yeah.
there's so much to share on it. But I just remember feeling so guilty and so gross. And I
Hmm.
think doing that so often, you start thinking about, how do I get out of this? Like, how can I eliminate all the food that I just ate? And so before I got to the bulimia, I started, I went to a doctor, and then they give you the diet pills. And then you take the diet pills, which pretty much just suppress your appetite. And then you're off the diet pills and they don't want to give you any more diet pills. Then I remember going to my doctor and he's just like, you're like, have you thought of talking to a psychiatrist? Like, and I just thought, this guy's crazy. He wanted to put me like on a holistic prescription. And I thought, no, I need the pills. Like I need a quick fix right now.
Yeah.
He didn't give them to me. So after the pills, you go back into your routine of what you're doing, you know, being addicted to the food. And it's just a pattern, and it's over and over and over until you reach a place of just complete, utter desperation and just, you know, turn to something as extreme as binging. One of the things that I also learned is that purging, binging, bulimia is not just for someone who goes into the restroom and puts their finger in their mouth to vomit and get rid of all of the food that they just ate. Bulimia is also behavior of someone who works out, has a meal, feels guilt about what they ate, and then they go to the gym and, you know, get on the treadmill for an hour. And I think that's something that a lot of women don't realize or even, you know, connect that, you know, there might be an issue here. If I'm eating a meal and I feel really bad about it, that it's leading me to go to the gym, whether it's right at that moment or tomorrow in the morning, and you're associating that I'm going to fix this by getting on the treadmill for 1 hour. And be very careful if you're in that place right now. And something really to think about.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So what was the turning point for you? When did you finally wake up and say like, okay, I cannot do this anymore?
So I would say that the turning point for me was I think it was probably the second time. So this episode consisted of me. I lived right next to a McDonald's at the time, and I remember going and eating 2 large fries and 2 Big Macs. And I went already with the plan in mind. I was like, I'm going to eat this, and then I'm going to throw up. And I want to say this was the second time. I had already done it once before. And as I found myself there on my knees in the restroom throwing up, I had my aha moment. I had my come to Jesus moment. Like, Edith, this is serious. I remember watching, I don't know if you're familiar with MTV, but back in the day, they had these episodes on bulimia. And I remember seeing women hiding jars of their vomit in their, you know, under the bed or in their closet. And I remember watching that at such a young, I mean, maybe I was 16, 17, but I just thought, that is so gross. Why would anybody ever do that? And don't ask yourself questions like, why would anybody do something that you don't understand? Because God's real quick to come in and be like, let me show you why.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just, you know, I found myself there, and I said, I remember thinking of those shows that I would watch, and it's just kind of, God gives you a glimpse of all these little snapshots of your life, you know? And I'm like, I'm that girl. Like, I'm that girl that I said I would never be, that I didn't understand. And, I was like, I have to do something about this. And yeah, that's pretty much where and it wasn't even really so much that I figured it out. I had a friend that went to she would go to my gym, and she's like, Edith, I read this book, you know, and it's really extreme. I don't know if you're going to like want to do it, but I'll bring you the book because it might help you. And she brought me the book, and I read the book. And I remember going on a cruise that week, and I skipped to the part that just said like what you're supposed to eat. I did it while on a cruise, got off the cruise, lost 7 pounds. And from there, just kind of kept losing the weight and keeping the weight off. So yeah.
Yeah. And so looking back at that season and just how much you've overcome, how can you see the goodness of God from it?
Oh my gosh. I remember going through that and just thinking, I mean, like how many of us do, you know, you face a hardship and you start to question God and why is this happening to me, especially during a time where I felt like I was really taking steps to commit my life to Christ. You know, I had gotten water baptized. I was like serving at church. I was doing all the things that I hadn't done before. And then you hit this storm, this huge storm, and you're just like, and why like this? Like you gave me this business, but now I'm fat. And like, all these girls around me are losing weight, and I have to watch them lose weight while I sit here and suffer, you know? And it's just, again, a lot of questions about just yourself, you know, and you wanting something so bad, and why isn't God giving it to you? And now in hindsight, I'm like so thankful that I went through that trial in my life. It was one of the hardest seasons of my life, but also the most rewarding in what God taught me through that season. The goodness of God really is that God wants to be in everything, and he wants to walk through everything with you.
Mm-hmm.
And really, like I said earlier, you know, I can't give you an explanation of like what worked or what happened, like why now my life is so different, why now I have such a healthy relationship with food, and why I look at my body differently, and why I appreciate who I am today. And you know, and really it's not a diet, it's not, you know, a routine that I have. It's my relationship with Christ. It's that I'm so close to him, closer than I've ever been. That experience brought me so close to God. And I know that it's nothing other than God taking me through it and bringing me out to the other side. And there's no other thing for me to do than to give him all the glory, to give him the credit for where I am now, that I'm not obsessing about counting calories or about what I'm eating, or, you know, not having the ability to enjoy a meal with my husband because I'm thinking about my workout the next morning and, you know, how I'm going to get those calories off. Like, it is such an amazing place to be. And that is the goodness of God. You know, you can't really measure it with anything. You can't give a scientific explanation. It's really my faith that has taken me to this place. And that's because God really stretched my faith in that season and brought me to a place of just complete surrender and trust. And as I say that, I know that these are things that, you know, a lot of women want for themselves. And it's a journey. It's a process. You know, that was in 2011 that started for me. It's 2022. And I'd say that, you know, it probably took about 6 years for me to get there, but it was a constant just pursuit. I never gave up. I just continued to pursue God, even though things didn't make sense to me, even though I didn't understand, even though I didn't like the way things felt for me. I still just learned to trust God. Didn't always, you know, have that correlation of trusting with all my heart, but I learned how to now, because of that, trust God. In every season of my life, every circumstance that we go through, every hardship, I've learned to really rest in the trust, despite, you know, what's going on around me.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, and so, since that season, how has God helped you to see yourself through his eyes?
Oh man. I think really just learning to just be me as I am, as, you know, it took, you know, 10 years for me to get where I am now. And maybe, not maybe, I know that in 10 years from now, I'm going to grow even more in my faith and really continue to learn about who I am and how God sees me. But right now I'm in a place that I know he just sees me as a daughter, as someone that he just wants to be in close relationship with. So again, it's all of these concepts that as women, we have such a hard time identifying with or really believing with all of our heart. Because there's the knowing, but really believing it where you feel it, where you're not lacking, where you're not, you know, discontent with where you're at. It's just more of this constant peace and satisfaction that is ongoing. It doesn't waver. It doesn't get taken from you unless you choose to give it away. You know, it's just something that I've learned to remain constant in because of what God has shown me of who I am. And it's not that I have to be a certain shape or size or weight. It has nothing to do with any of that. And my contentment doesn't come from any of that. You know, one of the things as you start getting older, your body is it's gonna take its course, you know, gravity's gonna take its course and you can't do anything about it. So, you know, you see women doing all these different things to try to maintain and preserve their youth. But what happens when you can't do that anymore? What happens when you don't have a pill? How do we as women learn to cope and to be fully satisfied with who we are and how Jesus sees us, not as the world sees us, or even sometimes, unfortunately, how we see ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's something, it's a conversation I'm constantly having with God, is like, let me see myself as you see me. Because
Mhm.
I do have moments where sometimes I'm like, oh, all these wrinkles, and maybe, you know, I should do this, or maybe I should do that. And then I'm like, I just want to do this gracefully, because it doesn't matter what I do right now. Like, it's the inevitable is going to happen, and I have to be content right now. It's not going to come through a pill, or through an injection, or through a procedure, or through, and if those things happen and they're for a season, or if that's something that, you know, any woman chooses to do for themselves, the only thing that I say is that just make sure that it's not your identity, that it's not, that has to happen in order for you to feel happy or to feel content with,
Mhm.
um, you know, your body or your image or your skin or anything like
Yeah.
that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you said it's more than just like knowing up here. It's really truly believing in your identity and who you are in Christ. And yeah, I mean, I as a woman, I think I struggle with those things too. And
Mhm.
I love my husband because he's just constantly reminding me like you're a daughter, you're royalty, and that's who you are in Christ. And so I love
Yes.
that. Well, Edith, thank you so, so much for being on Finding the Good. Your story is so beautiful, and I just know that, you know, it's one everyone needs to hear, and I just know someone's going to get something out of this. And so, thank you again.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. It's so great to connect with you and to do this with you, and to share my story. It's just been such a great experience. And I look forward to getting to know you a little better, maybe visiting you and Jamie out in
Oh,
Fort
yes,
Worth.
come over. We would love
Yes, I would
that.
love that. Yes.
And again, such an honor. Like, I didn't know you hadn't shared some of this story before. And so, thank you again.
Yes, of course. It's a pleasure. Thank you.